Welcome, Globetrotters and armchair adventurers. I know, you're itching to explore the world, taste exotic foods, maybe get a selfie with a confused-looking llama. But hold your horses, Wanderlusters, because things aren't always as peachy as they seem on those travel blogs. Did you know that according to recent data, a surprising number of popular tourist destinations have a hidden side? We're talking about places where that wrong turn down a side street could lead you straight into an episode of Locked Up Abroad. And trust me, no amount of Instagram likes is worth that kind of adventure. In this series, we're diving headfirst into a topic that's a little less beach bumming and a little more buckle up. Buttercup, the most dangerous destinations you should probably avoid like the plague in 2025. We're talking about places where the risk factor is higher than my grandma trying to parallel park after a few glasses of sherry. So whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting to plan your dream vacation, stick around. Consider this your travel advisory, your reality check, your don't say I didn't warn you guide to staying safe and sound in a world that's beautiful but can also be brutally unpredictable. Let's get started, shall we? First up, we're heading to the Horn of Africa, a region known for its stunning landscapes and unfortunately its fair share of turmoil. And when it comes to turmoil, Somalia is practically the poster child. For decades, Somalia has been grappling with a trifecta of trouble, terrorism, piracy, and civil unrest. It's like the Bermuda Triangle of bad news, and trust me, you don't want to get caught in that current. The U.S. Department of State, those guys who are usually all about spreading democracy and good vibes, even they're like, nope, steer clear of Somalia. And it's not hard to see why. We're talking about a place where kidnapping is practically a national sport, where violence is as common as a Starbucks on every corner in New York City, and where terrorist attacks are about as frequent as my awkward encounters at a middle school dance. In other words, not exactly the ideal vacation spot. So, unless you're a seasoned conflict journalist with a death wish, or you're really, really into playing Escape Room Extreme Edition, with real-life consequences, Somalia is a place you can safely scratch off your travel bucket list. Trust me, your travel insurance will thank you. Next, we're venturing into the heart of Africa, to a country that's as beautiful as it is troubled, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I mean, we're talking about a country with lush rainforests, incredible wildlife, and the mighty Congo River flowing through it. But here's the thing about parties, sometimes they get a little out of hand. This country has been plagued by conflict for decades. We're talking about full-blown armed conflict involving various rebel groups, militias, and government forces. And the saddest part is that it's the innocent civilians who often get caught in the crossfire. We're talking about people just trying to live their lives, raise their families, and dream of a brighter future. There are plenty of other beautiful and safe destinations out there waiting to be explored. All right, folks, we're moving on to a part of the world where holiday means surviving another day. I'm talking about Yemen, a place that's been stuck in a civil war longer than some YouTube influencers have been alive. And trust me, this ain't your average internet beef, people. We're talking full-blown conflict, the kind that makes you miss dial-up internet because at least back then, only one person could yell at you at a time. The U.S. Department of State is basically begging you not to go, and they're not known for being subtle. They're like that friend who tells you your outfit is bad, but instead of an outfit, it's a whole country. Kidnappings, violence, terrorist attacks. It's got all the ingredients for a terrible trip. Honestly, your travel itinerary should just be, don't go to Yemen. Now I know what you're thinking. Trevor, you're just focusing on the bad stuff. And yeah, maybe I am. But that's because the good stuff in Yemen is currently buried under a mountain of, well, bad stuff. This was once a place with a rich history, stunning architecture, and a culture that goes back centuries. But it's hard to appreciate ancient ruins when you're dodging bullets, you know? It's like trying to enjoy a picnic on a volcano. Sure, the view might be amazing, right up until the moment it explodes and ruins your sandwiches. So, until things calm down in Yemen, and by calm down, I mean achieving world peace and maybe inventing self-refilling hummus bowls, it's best to admire this country from afar. Like, really far. Maybe from space? Next up, we're heading over to South America, to a land that was once synonymous with beauty queens and oil wealth, Venezuela. Now, it's known for something else entirely, hyperinflation. We're talking inflation so high, even the price tags need price tags. You know how people joke about needing a wheelbarrow full of cash? In Venezuela, it's not a joke. It's Tuesday. This economic turmoil has led to food shortages, political instability, and a crime rate that's, let's just say, less than ideal. Imagine trying to enjoy a relaxing beach vacation while constantly worrying about getting mugged for your sunscreen. Not exactly the recipe for a good time. And if the economic situation wasn't enough to deter you, the U.S. Department of State has issued a big, fat do not travel advisory for Venezuela. Now, I know some of you adventurous types might be thinking, challenge accepted. But trust me on this one, folks. Even Bear Grylls would think twice about adding Venezuela to his travel itinerary. And the man drinks his own pee for a living. Look, it's one thing to rough it on a camping trip. It's another thing entirely to risk getting caught in the middle of a political uprising or, having your kidneys stolen. So, unless you're really into bartering for basic necessities with a fistful of worthless bills, maybe give Venezuela a miss this year. And probably next year too. Our next destination takes us to Afghanistan, a country that's been through more turmoil than a Kardashian marriage. We're talking decades of conflict, folks. Decades. That's longer than some of you have been alive, and you've been alive for a while. From the Soviet-Afghan War to the US-led invasion to the ongoing Taliban rule, Afghanistan has seen more than its fair share of violence and instability. It's like the world's most unfortunate reality show, and the ratings are abysmal. So if you're looking for a relaxing getaway where you can sip cocktails on the beach and forget about your troubles, Afghanistan is, shall we say, not the move. The risks in Afghanistan are as numerous as the grains of sand in, Afghanistan. We're talking terrorist attacks, kidnappings, bombings, basically all the things you'd find in a Liam Neeson movie, except in real life, there's no Liam Neeson to save you. And let's not forget about the humanitarian crisis. The country is facing severe poverty, food shortages, and a healthcare system that's, let's just say it needs more than a Band-Aid. It's heartbreaking, really. Afghanistan has so much potential, with its stunning landscapes, rich history, and resilient people. But right now, it's just too dangerous to even consider visiting. So unless you have a burning desire to star in your own personal action thriller, and not the fun kind, I'd suggest staying far, far away from Afghanistan. Trust me, your travel insurance won't cover this one. All right, folks. Next up on our world tour of places you might want to avoid booking your next vacation is North Korea. You know, that little slice of paradise nestled between China and, that's about it. They're not really into the whole open borders thing. Imagine a country run by a guy who looks like he's perpetually auditioning for a Backstreet Boys tribute band, except instead of singing about love, he's singing about missiles. And not the good kind that take you to space, the kind that make everyone nervous. So, you're probably thinking, Trevor, why would anyone in their right mind want to go there? Well, some people are curious, some people are journalists trying to do their jobs, and some people just really, really like communism. But here's the thing. North Korea's idea of a good time is probably very different from yours. Unless your idea of a good time is being constantly watched, having your phone tapped, and not being able to say anything bad about the supreme leader. Now, I'm all for respecting other cultures, but North Korea takes it to a whole new level. They've got more rules than a game of Quidditch played by lawyers. Want to take a picture of a statue of Kim Il-sung? Make sure you get the whole statue in the frame, my friend, because apparently, cropping the dear leader is a big no-no. And don't even think about bringing any Western books, magazines, or music. They're all about that K-pop life over there, and even then, it's probably heavily censored. You might think you're being sneaky listening to your hidden iPod, but Big Brother Kim is always watching, or listening, or both. So, unless you're really into propaganda museums, forced labor camps disguised as model villages, and the thrilling possibility of being detained for accidentally disrespecting a portrait of Kim Jong-il, maybe just stick to watching documentaries about North Korea from the comfort of your own couch. And hey, at least you can criticize the government while you're at it. Just, maybe not too loudly. You never know who's listening. Next up on our itinerary of maybe don't book that flight is the Central African Republic. And let me tell you folks, this one is heavy, even for a show that talks about politics for a living. This is a country that's been through the ringer. We're talking coups, rebellions, civil wars, you name it. They've probably had it in the last, forever. It's like the entire country is stuck in a really, really long season of Game of Thrones, but without the dragons or the good-looking cast. And when I say everyone's fighting, I mean everyone. You've got government forces, rebel groups, militias, and probably a few disgruntled squirrels with tiny little AK-47s just to keep things interesting. It's like a real-life, extremely depressing version of Call of Duty, but instead of respawning, you just, die. Now, I know what you're thinking. Trevor, you're being a bit dramatic. It can't be that bad, can it? Oh, my sweet summer child, it's worse. Because on top of all the violence and instability, the Central African Republic is also dealing with a massive humanitarian crisis. We're talking widespread poverty, hunger, disease, lack of access to clean water, the whole shebang. Imagine the worst parts of a Live Aid concert, but instead of being a one-time thing, it's just everyday life. So, unless you're a highly trained humanitarian worker with a death wish and a really good life insurance policy, I'm going to have to advise against booking that trip to the Central African Republic. Seriously, you're better off going literally anywhere else. And for those of you who are thinking, well, what can we do? Good news, there are organizations doing incredible work on the ground there. So instead of booking a flight, maybe donate a few bucks to help out. You'll feel better, I promise. Welcome back to the show, folks. Today we're talking about Iraq, a country that's been making headlines for, well, let's just say not always the best reasons. I mean, you've got to hand it to them. Iraq has a history that goes way back. We're talking Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the invention of writing, the wheel, the whole shebang. They were the OG innovators, the original trendsetters, the influencers of their time, back when people still thought the earth was flat and Instagram filters were just called shadows. But then, history happened. Invasions, empires, dictators, more invasions, the drill. It's like someone took a perfectly good civilization and put it through a blender on high speed. And unfortunately, the blender is still going. The Iraq War, as you might remember, was a bit of a doozy. And by a bit of a doozy, I mean a complete and utter disaster that destabilized the entire region and led to, shall we say, some unintended consequences. See, when you go around toppling regimes like they're Jenga towers at a frat party, things tend to get a little messy. And by messy, I mean you end up with a power vacuum that gets filled by all sorts of delightful characters like insurgents, militias, and of course, everyone's favorite party guest, ISIS. So yeah, Iraq is still dealing with the fallout from all that. We're talking terrorism, sectarian violence, political instability, the whole 9 yards. It's like a really intense game of Risk, but instead of little plastic armies, you've got real people with real guns and a real lack of chill. So, unless you're a war correspondent with a death wish or a contractor with a really good life insurance policy, I'm going to have to give Iraq a hard pass for now. Maybe in a few decades, once they've had a chance to rebuild and everyone's calmed down a bit. But for now, let's just stick to admiring their ancient history from afar, shall we? Welcome back, travel enthusiasts, to dangerous destinations you should avoid in 2025. This episode is brought to you by, well, nobody in their right mind would sponsor this episode. We're talking about Syria, folks. Once upon a time, Syria was the kind of place you'd visit to explore ancient history, marvel at Roman ruins, and maybe enjoy some delicious hummus. These days, the only thing ancient in Syria is the conflict. The country has been locked in a brutal civil war for years, and let's just say it hasn't exactly been a picnic. We're talking violence, kidnapping, terrorist attacks, the whole buffet of bad times. Imagine trying to explain to your travel insurance company that you got kidnapped by a group with a name that sounds like it came from a Game of Thrones audition. Yeah, it was the Sons of the Desert Fire or something. Look, they had AKs, okay? Bottom line, Syria is a no-go zone. And trust me, I'm from a continent that knows a thing or two about conflict. If Africa is shaking its head and saying, nah, bruh, not even worth it, then you know it's serious. It's heartbreaking to see what's happened to Syria. This is a country with an incredibly rich history, a vibrant culture, and people known for their warmth and hospitality. Or at least they were before the war turned everything upside down. Now, instead of welcoming tourists, they're dodging bombs and trying to survive. Millions of Syrians have been displaced, forced to flee their homes and seek refuge elsewhere. It's a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. But amidst all the chaos and destruction, there's a glimmer of hope. The Syrian people are incredibly resilient, and they haven't given up on their country. They dream of a day when peace will return, when their children can grow up without the constant threat of violence. Let's hope that day comes soon. In the meantime, do yourself a favor. Scratch Syria off your travel bucket list. For now, it's best to explore this beautiful, troubled nation through documentaries and history books. We're heading to South Sudan, a country more famous for its struggles than its successes. Gained independence in 2011, plunged into civil war soon after. Ongoing violence and political instability, more displaced people than you can imagine. The U.S. State Department advises against travel. Risks include kidnappings and armed conflict. But there's hope. The people are resilient. They're working hard for a brighter future. Let's support them from afar, educate ourselves, and support organizations making a difference. Awareness is the first step towards action. Maybe one day, South Sudan will be a must-see destination. Until then, let's send good vibes and support those fighting for peace. Next up, we're jetting over to North Africa, to a land with a rich history and a present that's, well, complicated. We're talking about Libya, folks. Remember Muammar Gaddafi? This was his stomping ground for over 40 years. In 2011, the Arab Spring swept through, and Gaddafi's regime went down in a blaze of explosions and gunfire. Libya found itself stuck in a cycle of violence and instability. The Libyan people deserve a chance to rebuild their country and enjoy its many wonders. And hey, if you're really itching for a North African adventure, might I suggest Morocco? They've got camels, spices, and a whole lot less gunfire. Just saying. Well, folks, there you have it. A whirlwind tour of some of the most dangerous destinations on the planet. Now I know what you're thinking. Trevor, you've officially ruined my travel bucket list. But hey, that wasn't my intention. I'm all for exploring the world, trying new things, and expanding your horizons. But it's important to be informed, to be aware of the risks, and to make smart choices about where you travel and when. Your safety and well-being should always be your top priority, no matter how tempting that Instagram-worthy photo op might seem. Trust me, no picture is worth risking your life for. So what do you think? Did any of these destinations surprise you? Have you ever been to a place that you would consider dangerous? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're looking for more travel inspiration, be sure to check out my other videos. I promise not all of them are about doom and gloom. Until next time, stay safe, travel smart, and keep exploring our amazing planet. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more travel-related content.